जय जय okay, where we reach? Where have we stopped last time? 7 7 and 8, right? I see, that's right. So verse 7, it says, since this teaching is not seen elsewhere, you alone are the teacher, like calling a fox a lion, a tirthika. It would be a word of flattery, right? So it says, this, since this teaching is not seen elsewhere, right? So this teaching refers to the teaching, the unique teaching, right? The teaching of dependent origination and the teaching of dependent arising. Dependent arising is seen as the means of emptiness, and emptiness as a means of dependent arising, right? So this unique teaching is not seen elsewhere, right? It's not seen elsewhere in any other, during the time of the, the Buddha, and also later on many traditions, when we talk about the traditions, have those traditions which is grown up and developed in India during the ancient time. These traditions have their philosophical background, pretty rich in their philosophical understanding. So so when we talk about the teaching is not elsewhere, so this teaching of dependent origination are not seen in these other traditions, right, which have developed in India during very ancient times. So because this teaching is not seen in other traditions, and you alone are the teacher, right? So therefore you are only called as teacher, you are only called as supreme teacher, excellent teacher. Because why you remain as an excellent teacher and supreme teacher is because you taught the teaching which led to the eternal bliss, which led to the eternal peace. So this the method which bring an end to the suffering is not seen elsewhere, only in in the teaching of the in your teaching, in your doctrine, this teaching is only seen. So therefore you alone are called the teacher, excellent teacher, right? Now if that is the case, now then there are many during those there are many great teachers, like many great teachers came during in ancient times. They called to be they are called as the supreme teacher, the excellent teacher, the great founder, all this. If you alone are the if the Buddha alone is the teacher, then are there many other teachers? Are there not teachers, right? Now the question comes: are there not a excellent teacher? Are there not a supreme teacher, right? Now, so then the words say these are like a fox being called a lion, right? They are called teacher, but in reality they are not a supreme teacher, right? when we talk about the lion, lion, they have a sharp fang, sharp fangs, and then also the sharp claws, So the fox can be also called as lion, although, but in reality, the fox stand for the lion? No. Why? The fox cannot be stand for the lion because the fox has no full strength of the lion. Right. Similarly, these tirthakas, they are called as, although they are not a supreme teacher, but then they are called as a teacher, right? Because why they are not the why they are not the supreme teacher in reality, right? Why they are not the supreme teacher is because in order to be the supreme teacher, you need to you should be qualified to be as a qualified teacher, right? Or supreme teacher or excellent teacher. So therefore, the tirthikas, the other teachers, they are not called as supreme teacher because they have not qualified. Now, what qualification is lacking, right? So the qualification is lacking. What kind of qualification is lacking is because the qualification of speaking the truth of dependent origination, dependent arising. So this very qualification is lacking. Therefore, they are not called as the supreme teacher, excellent teacher, right? It would be, but still they are being called as the teacher, right? Because it is like flattery. It would be like a word of flattery. Yes, calling them is like a flattery means a kind of artificial, right? Nice word, a very beautiful word. You can use the beautiful word, the nice word, right? The artificial word, but in reality, it's not. Now here, as we said, the one who taught dependent arising and dependent origination is only the teacher. Now the question arises, right? If you alone are the teacher, then what about the other teachers? Then it says the other teachers is similar to like a lion calling a fox, right? Then we also learned that they are not qualified. Why they are not qualified? Is because they have no qualification as a teacher, as a supreme teacher, excellent teacher, unequal teacher, right? A matchless teacher. So now we also have to understand that in their tradition, I think in their tradition, we also know, like we also know, there are two kinds of set of teachings, two set of teachings. One teaching which talks about the wisdom, right? One teaching which talks about, for example, like the kind of what is called as the method aspects of the path, right? The method aspects of the path, or what when I use the method aspects of the path, to put it in a simple way, I could use universal ethics, secular ethics, right? Secular ethics or universal ethics, universal values. So, when it comes to the universal values, the tradition itself and the teacher itself, the teachers themselves, and also the teacher also brought tremendous amount of benefit, tremendous amount of benefit for the humanity and for the huge mass, right? And also when the teacher themselves pass away, they left the instructions which are then being practiced, and then people gain a kind of benefit benefit, right? So this is not only in ancient Indian traditions, right? We also can talk about also there are many traditions these days, right? So in terms of from the perspective of the what is called as secular ethics, although the tradition can the tradition can regard these values, these secular values as something related to their own philosophical teaching, right? Some kind of teaching. But then for us, so those we cannot say all the people are the believer, right? All the people are, all the 7 billion people cannot be a believer, neither they cannot be a non-believer, right? Some believe in, some believe, some don't believe, so it doesn't matter, right? But then when it comes to the secular ethics, what we call as secular values, so this is something universal, right? No need to bring the issue of religion into this, right? So therefore, when it comes to the secular ethics, or when it comes to the the values, the practice of love, the practice of compassion, the practice of forgiveness, the patience, the tolerance, all these things, millions of people get tremendous amount of benefit. So therefore, from that perspective, from that angle, their teaching is a valid teaching, right? The teacher is a valid, the teaching is a valid. So there is no doubt. When we say here, it's like falling a course. In what ways? It's like the those the founder or the teachers of the traditions are called like calling a fox a lion. From the perspective of from the perspective of speaking the dependent arising, dependent origination. So this qualification they don't have. So these qualifications they are lacking. From that perspective, the tradition is not a valid, not a reliable. The teacher is not reliable, right? What we call not a valid teaching. The instruction is not a valid, right? Because why not valid is because the teaching, if we put it, many of the the dependent arising, many of the things, many of the the things that they taught, when it comes to the view side, when it comes to the when it comes to the view, the view is what they establish as something which helps to strengthen the grasping rather than elevating and rather than removing the grasping. They aggravate it, they increase, they strengthen the grasping. Yet on the other hand, from the moral side, from the conduct side, teaching is excellent, the highest form of appreciation, highest form of the praise, right? So you can take into account two things, from the conduct side, their teaching is really kind of valid teaching. Teacher themselves valid in terms of the in terms of presenting the teaching on divine origination. Just it look like the mean for strengthening the grasping. So this is what it is saying, right? Then right, so therefore it becomes very important, right? It becomes very important, first of all, to understand, right, to establish the teaching as a valid teaching. I think a few times, right? Teaching is established as a valid teaching and reliable teaching first, then the teacher is established as the founder. The Buddha himself is, in this case, Buddha is established as a reliable and a valid teacher. First, his doctrine and teaching is established as an authentic and reliable and valid teaching, right? Now, what happened, right? Now, question is, what happened if we reverse it? Then what happened, right? If you try to establish the founder or the Buddha himself as a valid teacher first, and then try to establish his teaching as a reliable teaching and or the valid teaching later on, what happens? Then what happens is, then one is get confused, right? Now, for example, right, Buddha taught, for some people Buddha taught there is anatma. For some other group of people, Buddha taught anatma theory. On the one hand, Buddha taught atma theory, right? Atma means there is self, there is independent self, whereas in many of his teachings, where he taught anatma theory, no self theory, no independent self, no absolute self, who are we going to believe? The speaker is one speaker, but he taught the contradictory teaching. Now, who are we to believe? Are we going to believe in the no self theory or independent self? Right? Who are we to believe? So this problem arises. You don't know how to, right? And also, if the teaching say, if the sutra say this is a valid teaching, if the sutra say this is a definitive teaching, does not mean it is a definitive. If the sutra say this particular teaching is a interpretative teaching, that does not mean it is interpretative. So all this problem, we run into problem, great problem in dealing with all these issues. So therefore, now the final conclusion is that we need to use the stainless reasoning, right? Stainless reasoning. For example, like the great master like Arya Nagarjuna, he used that stainless logic, stainless reason, Arya Nagarjuna, and so he also was somebody who was predicted by Buddha that he would come to clarify some of the most subtlest point of Sutra and Tantra. So we need to rely on Arya Nagarjuna's teaching, Arya Nagarjuna's teaching, because it is he who clarified many of the deepest the points of both Sutra and Tantra, right? Like this. And not only so, if Buddha say, right, if the Buddha say this, for example, like the third turning wheel of the Dharma, Buddha's in the third turning wheel of the Dharma, right? There is one sutra called revealing the intention of the Buddha. This belongs to the third sutra, right? Buddha say, this in the third turning wheel of the Dharma, this sutra is what? This sutra is the definitive sutra. My knowledge school, right? My knowledge school say this is a definitive sutra. Is it definitive? No. If you were to ask Arya Nagarjuna, is it definitive? No, he said this is interpretative. Arya Nagarjuna say, give me a break. So this is not a new canon. Buddha taught this with Buddha taught sutra. If a certain sutra is the interpretative sutra, then Buddha taught with three reasons. One is what is his main subject, the main his main intention. So first is his main intention, and then what is the purpose. Number three is, if you accept this, it goes against the reason, it goes against the common sense, it goes against your experience. So with these three, we can prove this teaching is a interpretative, not a definitive. Right? So this is how we approach things like this. Therefore, Buddha, very out of great compassion, Buddha say, O monks and scholars, O monks and scholars and wise, O monks and wise, right? Just as the goldsmith examine the gold by cutting, rubbing and melting, so likewise examine my teachings thoroughly well, not out of devotion and faith to me, but rather through investigation. So Buddha taught this. Right? Now, with this beautiful statement, what we are going to conclude? What conclusion we get? Right? What conclusion we get? This statement talks about the four reliance. This statement talks about the four reliance. Do not rely on the person, rely on the teaching. Do not rely on the words, but rely on the meaning. Do not rely on the interpretative, but rely on the definitive. Do not rely on the sensory perception, but rather on a mental consciousness. Right. So the first one, do not rely on the teacher, but rely on the teaching. So that Buddha say, not out of devotion, but examine my teaching. So the first one show this. Right. The first one showing this. Not out of devotion, not out of respect to me, but you yourself examine, check. If it goes well with your experience, common sense, and experience, reason, then accept it. So that shows you rely on the teaching, but not rely on the teacher. Right. That alone shows you should be well equipped. You should be very informative. You should have vast learning, extensive learning, to be relying on the teaching. Right. And then what happened? Then again, rely on the. Don't rely on the words. Rely on the meaning. What does that mean? Right. first first we hear, right? First we hear, and then we gain we gain the wisdom through hearing, right? We gain the wisdom through hearing. So that means, and also we gain the wisdom through reflection. We gain the wisdom through reflection. So this is what it says, right? Now, not only this, for example, sometimes when we are being asked to meditate, right? When we are being asked to reflect or meditate, for example, then this prayer, dependent origination prayer, if we are being asked to recite, meditate on this meaning, meditate on the first verse, right? First verse. If we are being asked to meditate on the first verse, he who speaks the basis of seeing, this makes him a knower and the teacher unexcelled. I bow to you, I concur. You who saw dependent origination and taught it, right? Just reading alone. If you just read it and do not think about the meaning, this is how you rely on the word, not relying on the meaning. In order to rely on the meaning, you get the idea. You need to get the idea what it is all about, what this statement is saying, what this verse really is pointing out, right? We need to have clear idea, right? Clear idea. So this is how you can rely on the meaning. Then rely on the do not rely on the interpretative, but rely on the definitive, right? Now, don't rely on the interpretative, but rely on the definitive. That means, now for example, again take the example like King Ajustara. King Ajustara killed his father, right? King Ajustara killed his father because of under the guidance of the misleading teacher, So then Buddha taught we called the Sutra of removing the remorse. So Buddha taught the teaching, a kind of teaching which suited his heart. Buddha said, yes, what you have done is right. What you have done is right. There is nothing wrong in you, because this shows Buddha is very skillful, right? From the practitioner's viewpoint, for example, sometimes we are not skillful, right? If somebody come and committed a grave crime, we try to discourage the person. You're so bad. But Buddha didn't say this. Buddha encouraged him. Buddha encouraged him. Yeah, what you did is right. What you have done is right. So, right. So, if we were to accept what Buddha has stated, Buddha said, yes, you have to done with the father and mother, something like this. If we accept this, then the problem, we would run into problem, definitely. We would run into problem, right? So this is what you are. So therefore, I say, now what is the intention? Buddha's intention. Buddha taught this sutra in order to remove the sense of remorse, because he felt such a deep sense of remorse, having committed a crime, right? He was almost thinking about committing suicide. So he was already burdened with this thought. Again, if we try to discourage him, oh, you are so bad like this, definitely he would do this. So Buddha very skillfully, Buddha is very skillful. So, you're right. So then his sense of grief, sense of grief and sense of remorse, little bit calm down, and then Buddha then began to teach. Buddha began to teach. But what is the Buddha's intention is, because it was his King Ajustara craving and attachment which killed his father. So therefore, in the main intention of the Buddha is that you are instead of killing somebody, you are to kill your craving and attachment, right? So you are to kill your craving and attachment. So with this motivation, with this intention, right? With this intention, Buddha taught your father and mother is to be killed, right? So therefore, we have to rely on the definitive. Here in this regard, all the definitive we can understood in different way. But here in this regard, definitive, if we accept as Buddha taught in this sutra, then we would run into problem. So the only way left out is to seek the intention of the Buddha. The intention of the Buddha is to remove the suffering. He was referring that you have to kill your grasping, your own craving, right? Then with this, then King Ajustara finally he made the purification, and at last he achieved the what we call a stream enterer. He achieved on the path. He achieved the path of seeing. He realized the path of seeing in the one lifetime because of his purification practice and engaging in dharma practice like this. And then the third, now the fourth one, do not rely on the perception, sensory perception, but rely on the mental consciousness, because now here we have in order to test the gold, we use the what kind of method? We use the method like cutting, melting, and rubbing. These three are used, in olden times, but I don't know. These times people use a different kind of, the modern, devices to test the purity of the gold, right? Like also chemicals are being used, right? And then small, nice devices they used, all the, in the early times, cutting, rubbing, melting. So this is being used, right? Because these are more reliable, Just rubbing itself is sufficient to gain the certainty that the gold is 100%. It's 100% pure. You cannot, because sometimes you have gold plated, right? Something which is what we call gold plated ring, gold plated jewelry, necklace, something like this, right? So rubbing is not enough. First rubbing, then what? Then melting, whatever method you use, melting, you melt to obtain the purity, to see the purity of the gold. And also you can use the cutting. So this is how to say, similar to this cutting. The method of cutting, rubbing, and melting is similar to ascertaining the emptiness through hearing, reflection, and meditation. Right? Again, that is not enough. You need to go beyond. One need to go beyond. Right? Because meditation alone, experience gained through meditation, again, cannot be that reliable right? There is more deeper, deeper kind of, mental states. Now, for example, meditative equipoise. So we need to make the ultimate nature of reality the focal point of the meditative equipoise. Then meditative equipoise and the ultimate nature of reality, goes like, placing water on a water, almost like inseparable. At that point, so this is reliable, the most, like. So do not rely on the teacher, but rely on the teaching, right? Again, another problematic is, you see, this, for example, right, this, for example, one sutra state, now this sutra, for example, like, now House Sutra, right? House Sutra is a definitive teaching, reliable teaching, valid teaching, definitive. If you say House Sutra is a definitive teaching because Buddha is saying this and that, is it valid reason? Right, check if this is a valid reason. If you have to say Buddha is saying this, House Sutra is a definitive teaching because another sutra is saying this, then again you have to prove another sutra is a valid sutra. Again you have to prove that another sutra. It go like endless. We will get to nothing, right? So the only thing is we use the reason, stainless reason, to prove as such, right? Like this. And then, right, so House Sutra is a valid teaching. Perfection of Wisdom Sutra is a definitive teaching. Sorry, not valid, definitive teaching. Definitive teaching and also the valid teaching, right? Valid teaching, right? If these teaching are valid, then right, then why do we prove this as a valid teaching? Huh? Because it's also valid. Why you need to prove it as valid? Huh? Reliable teaching. Buddha is, these teachings are already reliable. Why we are trying to investigate further? Or we are not satisfied with Buddha's saying, going into further, investigation, not satisfied with saying the teaching itself is reliable. What do you say? Yeah, but this, we say this is a reliable teaching, Perfection Wisdom Sutra, 8,000 Perfection Sutra. We have the extensive one, middle one, the short version. All these are valid. If these are valid, we say these are reliable, valid teaching, but it is not enough that these are valid, right? Valid teaching. This is proven as a valid teaching. We need to understand in what ways these are proven as a valid, right? In what ways these teaching are proven as a valid teaching. So therefore, we say, therefore we say, we need to gain conviction, right? We need to gain conviction, because transformation only takes place through conviction. If we were to really, truly, find the everlasting joy and peace, this is only through conviction, conviction. First, we gain the conviction. In order to gain the irreversible conviction, unshakable conviction in something, we need to analyze. Right. So this is one of very important thing. Otherwise, if you were to supposed to say, I mean, the Buddhas are very compassionate. The enlightened beings are very compassionate. Very compassionate like this. But temporary, we receive the tremendous amount of benefit. But then to remove the seed of the delusion, analytical meditation is a must. Analytical meditation. Without analytical meditation, very transformation is not that effective. Even if little transformation take place, not that effective. The powerful, that transformation takes only through powerful reason, powerful analytical meditation. Because why is? Because we can tell from our own experience. Just take the compassion. It is very hard to cultivate the compassion. When we talk about the compassion, we are talking about the universal compassion and unconditional love and compassion. This is difficult. Then through persistent effort, persistent meditation and familiarity with this kind of loving compassion, and then finally, then these things really become something living and tradition, something living in one's heart, mind. Then a small incident causes you to bloom, blossom your compassion, loving compassion, right? So, on the other hand, when we talk about these destructive emotions, negative emotions, they're not. These things will like destructive emotions, like afflictions, negative emotions. These things don't go away easily. These things don't go away easily. Because why they don't go away easily is because it is the grasping. It is the grasping that we have entrusted for over a long duration of time. These are not very easy to live, unless we ourselves try to struggle and try to fight against these emotions. They will never live. They will never live easily. So these are very, very smart. Then those afflictions, what we call as afflictions, these are very smart, very clever, very smart. Right. They can take in many ways. They can take in many forms. Pretending to be okay like this. Okay, but in reality, it really deeply ingrained. Try to, in one way or another way, try to make us go through suffering in one way or another way, right? If that is the seed of the afflictions are that so easy, then we all the time we just doing reading, circumambulating, and then we are not saying these are not good, these are we are not saying these are not necessary. We say these are definitely necessary, in order to act as a support, in order to act as a support to further strengthen your loving compassion, these things, right, positive qualities. But then when it comes to the right, when it comes to the overcoming, elevating these destructive emotions, wisdom is necessary. Wisdom is a must. Wisdom is a must. Without wisdom, you can temporarily suppress. There are many methods, which involves suppressing the afflictions, but in the long run, so right. Right, and then so anyway, I'll leave here. It would be a word of flattery. Then, wondrous teacher, verse 8, wondrous refuge, wondrous speaker, wondrous savior. I pay homage to that teacher who taught well dependent origination. Right. Because the teaching that you taught is something really marvelous. Teaching that you taught is so marvelous that because of the the uniqueness of this teaching, the preciousness of this teaching, which makes you wondrous teacher, wondrous refuge, wondrous speaker, and wondrous savior. You all become this because your teaching is really excellent. Because it is only through teaching which makes the Buddha excellent speaker, excellent teacher, excellent protector, excellent savior. Right. Wondrous teacher. Here teacher means someone who show the path to who show the unmistaken path to liberation. Right, who show the unmistaken path to liberation, bringing. Now, what kind of path? What kind of path Buddha taught? What kind of path Buddha taught, which leads to lasting peace, lasting joy, right? Lasting joy, lasting peace, and the complete free of elaborations, right? So that is none other than dependent arising itself, dependent arising, right? So that teaching is none other than dependent arising, because this dependent arising really finally brought you in the state that you want, right? Wondrous teacher, wondrous refuge. Here it says wondrous refuge. What is the difference between repeating 2 times, right? Wondrous teach, refuge. Again, wondrous speaker, wondrous savior. Refuge and savior same, huh? What does refuge here means, right? Refuge. So, refuge here means, although you can say from the perspective that Buddha has eliminated all the limitations, Buddha has perfected all the qualities. From that perspective, you say refuge, right? One could say like this, but here, I better use the refuge, because Buddha is the one who dispelled the suffering of who dispelled the fears, who dispelled the fears of the transmigratory beings. Buddha who dispelled the suffering, who dispelled the fears, all the fears of the beings. Now how? That's how. Buddha became the refuge because he, in the beginning, he was just like us, He was in some cases worse than us, more terrible than us in the beginning, Sometimes we have better rebirth, Buddha has more inferior rebirth, sometimes, Buddha has inferior rebirth. So, there is no kind of certainty, right. So, we all are same. When in the beginning, Buddha is all are just like us. But then, through, understanding, understanding and realizing that many of the good qualities that is within us, Buddha tried to activate them, right? Buddha tried to activate them. So, Buddha himself finally practiced very hard, and Buddha gained certain amount of certain realization or attainments based on his own experience. So, this experience that Buddha gained, Buddha taught to us. So, here you go, Buddha say, if you follow that path, you will become same like me. So, Buddha showed this path, out of great compassion. Buddha showed this path, and then we as a follower, try to practice that way. Try to first, first we are also in some way doubtful, whether this will work out or not, some kind of skeptical, staying in skeptical, what to do, right? Or sometimes we are lost at sea, right? The lost, the bird lost in the sky, right? Sometimes we also don't know how to swim in order to reach to the destination. So, through these way, then the followers, those followers who finally gain experienced, actualized experienced. So, this experience helps the followers to dispel the suffering, right? So, but whose kindness is this? Buddha's kindness. Buddha show the dependent arising, the teaching of, and this dependent arising, the practitioner and the followers practice, and then finally gain the experience, deeper experience. So, this deeper experience dispel all the fears, right? So, the instrumental, the main cause is the practicing, the dependent arising, the dependent origination. So, from that perspective, Buddha is the refuge. Then it says, wondrous speaker. You are wondrous speaker, right? So, Buddha became a wondrous speaker. Buddha became a wondrous speaker because he taught the dependent arising. He taught the dependent teaching on dependent arising through many reason, through manifold logic, through manifold reason and logic, presented in a very beautiful way, using a lot of analogies, beautiful analogies. Buddha tried his level best, to present all this teaching, much suited to the followers, much suited to the followers, right. So, because if you use only one logic, like even the food, if you eat all the time one food, we don't enjoy, right. So, people have different mentality, people have different mental dispositions. Similarly, Buddha also taught many reason, logic, that things are dependent arising, things are empty of inherent existence. There are many, Buddha explained through many logic, the dependent arising, the empty of inherent existence, through many, wonderful logic and reason. So, in presenting the teaching of dependent arising through different logic, he is the excellent speaker, right? He say wondrous speaker and wondrous savior, right? Buddha is also called wondrous savior. Now, it looks same like refuge and savior, looks same, right? Now, here wondrous savior. Because why he remained the savior is because he is a spiritual friend, and he is a friend and the teacher of all the transmigratory beings, right. Because in what ways he is a excellent, he is a spiritual friend, he is the guide of all the transmigratory beings, is because he tried his level best. So, Buddha make every attempt to remove the defects, to remove the faults of the beings through peaceful method and wrathful method. If wrathful method is necessary, then is applied, otherwise peaceful method. But again, whether the peaceful method work in particular person or not, it depends on the not depends on Buddha's motivation, but rather depends on the mentality, the mental disposition of each of the person. Each of the person has different mental disposition. So, acting on their mentality, not Buddha, when he taught first noble truth, he didn't taught the things are very the altruistic mind, the conduct of bodhisattvas, and then presenting. In the first noble truth, Buddha taught the selflessness, emptiness. Buddha taught emptiness, but the way he presents the emptiness is not through the many reason. Here, what we call as wondrous speaker, he didn't explain the emptiness through a lot of reason and logic, because if he were to do so, his the disciple of the recipient of the of first teaching, for the first turning wheel of the Dharma, this disciple and this recipient are not ready to accept the vast teaching, because their internal GB is not ready. The internal GB is not strong enough to hold all the teachings, vast teachings, right. So, therefore, Buddha taught according to their mental disposition, right. Then in the second turning over the wheel of the Dharma, Buddha taught all the things are devoid of inherent existence, right. All the things. In the first noble truth, in some cases, Buddha taught things are some characteristics of the intrinsic reality. Then somebody raised the question, right? Somebody raised the question to the Buddha. You make the contradictory statement. Why you did these things? Because on the first on the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, you thought things are intrinsic. In the second turning wheel of Dharma, you thought things are non-intrinsic. Things are devoid of intrinsic. What is your intention? Then Buddha taught third turning wheel of Dharma. So this is the response, right? So this is how third turning wheel of the Dharma came into being, right? And then, so wondrous Savior, I pay homage to that teacher. So because of such a excellent, wondrous speaker, wondrous teacher, wondrous Savior, in all you make the most excellent teacher, because you taught only you taught something which is so beneficial for all, right? If something is very beneficial to all the beings, who wouldn't dislike? So for the beggar, right? For example, like homeless, if I give something, something which he want or which she want, if I give, how happy the homeless person or the beggar feel, because I am able to fulfill the person's wish. Similarly, here, if I taught something, if I give something that which is being liked by all, right? Everybody feels happy. Everyone feels happy because I am able to fulfill the wish. So what kind of wish? Because I am giving something which helped him or her, everybody, to invest in a lasting peace, to invest in a really reliable peace, in a very most joyful state, to remove all that what they don't want, to fulfill all what they want, to fulfill all what they want, and to remove all they do not want. So from that perspective, Buddha is, I pay homage to that teacher who brings benefit to all, the entire humanity, entire beings, because you taught something which is so which is so difficult to find elsewhere. That something, teaching or instruction, is which pacifies the suffering of all, which gives the lasting joy and happiness. That is none other than dependent arising, dependent origination. Right? Who taught well dependent? Now he said, Jitsongapa said, I pay homage to that teacher who taught well dependent origination. So Jitsongapa, Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, because you taught dependent origination so well that to such a teacher like you, I pay my homage, I pay my salutation. Right. Now here, what it is that not only Jitsongkhapa, but also the great the beings like Ari Nagarjuna and his many of the spiritual sons, and almost all his spiritual sons, and also Jitsongkhapa and his all the followers, many of his really practitioner, scholar followers, they praise dependent origination. But how is it that dependent arising is praised so unique, in a unique way? How is it? What makes something the teaching on dependent arising so uniqueness, so unique in the flavor, right? So usually if you take everything for granted, if you don't think much, then then when people talk about dependent arising, we wonder, in what ways this can be so helpful, right? If you think a little bit, if you try to dissolve, if you try to absorb into this subject, little bit, and then try to connect with our heart, then we feel the flavor, right? So this is how we try to feel the flavor of of the essence of the dependent origination or dependent arising. And one of the uniqueness of the dependent origination or the dependent arising is that because it dispels, when we talk about dependent origination, dependent arising, right, and then this dispel what? This dispels the few things, right? This the logic of this dependent arising, dependent origination, dispel the few things. What are these things? Dispel some of the worst distorted view, perverted view, some of the what is called a nihilistic view. So these notions, mistaken notions or falsehood notion is being dispelled, right? In some of the tradition, in ancient traditions, old ancient Indian tradition, the philosophical schools pretty rich in their philosophical system. So in some of these traditions, there are some system which do believe in the fact that things arise without cause and condition. Thing comes into being without cause and condition. And then some say, yeah, things come into being, yeah, with cause and conditions. But then they do believe things come into being with cause and condition. Again, that cause and condition is or are discordant causes and conditions. Discordant causes and conditions. Many dissimilar causes and conditions, right? For example, now take the example like some of the school, they say the consciousness is what comes from father's the father's drop and mother's drop consciousness, right? So this is discordant. They do believe in the result or the fruit coming into being because of the discordant cause and condition. And then further, there are some systems who do believe in the fact that this is interesting to also understand. When things come into being, there is only one cause. One cause gives rise to one cause. One cause gives rise to one result. One cause gives rise to multi-result, multi-fruit, right? So now we try to relate this to our day-to-day life experience, right? Sometimes when things we got something goes wrong, right? Then things go wrong. It look like we are ready to blame for one person, right? It is everything you. This very evident, obvious. It is you who create all this problem. and then just just trying to get rid of that person, seem to look like all the problem is solved. Right? We also some habit, like when something goes wrong, oh, this person is the one. You are to be responsible for all this. You take the responsible. And then also not only the inanimate object, for example, object, right? So, for example, many of the things, we are expecting things to happen as you think. Then, when things does not go in the same way as what you believe and what you think, we are a little bit upset. We are not ready to accept the truth then. Right? For example, just take a small example. You plan to go somewhere else, for maybe for picnic, maybe to movie. Then all of a sudden, the raining, heavily. It rains, begin to rain heavily. Then what we do think is, now what the hell is with the rain? You wish this stop now. You say you are expecting the rain to stop in the same way as you think. Things should go in the same way as we think, right? And this is how the what we call as the enemy and the friend and everything becomes, because if things does not go in the same way as you expected, somebody becomes your enemy. If things go in the same way as you expected, somebody becomes your friend. Right? So we expecting everything to happen at what we think. So, right. So this example shows, we do, although verbally we may not say, we may not believe, we may not believe that one single cause give rise to one single result. But in the depth of your heart, you believe. In the depth of your heart, you are believing. Therefore, all these things, incident take place. Get lost at it. So this is sometimes we need to check this. Is interesting, pretty interesting to go through some analysis, some examination. Really helpful sometimes. Right. Then therefore things cannot turn in the same way as what we think, right? But then therefore mind transformation, mental transformation makes sense. Mental transformation makes sense, because you cannot expect things to do exactly in the same way as what you think, because things things may come out things may turn out to be what you expected, or may not turn out to be what you not expected. This happen, all this because of the aggregation, because the aggregation of so many causes and conditions, everything is governed, everything is controlled, ruled by causes and conditions. One causes give rise to another. It's one hand, if you further go into detail, it's so complicated, when causes and conditions. Each, many factors are, assembled. Just a small particle, there's a water element, earth element, and then you also need the what kind of heat, Now, for example, you see the peacock, peacock feather. Can you, each of the drawing, it's a nature, right? It's a natural, drawing. It's a natural, you kind of, like. It's a natural thing, but then can we say peacock has this color, this different color? What kind of poison the peacock eat? What is the strength of the poison at what point of time? So complicated. Many things are complicated, right? For example, yeah, it's okay. So then, and then, so in reality, one cause cannot give rise to only one cause. There is no such thing, only one cause. No such thing. You can say substantial cause, the main cause, you can say main cause. There's a main cause and cooperative cause, right? Cooperative cause or contributing factors, definitely. But then there is no such thing, the only one cause. There is no such thing. Right? But in many of our cases, we, sometimes we get, the angry, all these things, we lose the temper because we believe in only, from the depth of your heart, you believe in only one cause. This is something that, you are to be blamed for. We believe this is the one that I could blame for. And then one cause give rise to multiple result. It's again not possible. One cause, only one cause cannot give rise to multiple result. Again, if you talk about, you just take an example, one tree. In the one tree, there are 100 apples. All these 100 apples, the main cause is the seed, the seed itself. Only one seed. But then seed itself alone, seed alone, cannot make all these 100 apples come into being, right? Again, the seed need temperature, the moisture, the soil, right? And then fertilizer, water, sunlight. Again, whole lot of things is involved. Whole lot of things involved. If you try to see the causes and conditions, one give rise to another, one give rise to another. Everything is connected in one way or another way, right? If you go to a hospital, then we show everything, like in some in medical, in medical field, medical science, you need in some knowledge of mathematics, right? Also in some knowledge of mathematics and chemistry, like this, and also common sense. Everything is related, interconnected. Very subtle things are, right? For example, if you develop some problem with your eyesight, if you develop some eyesight, right? So you should have the fuller knowledge. What happens if my in order to develop my eyesight, if I remove the something as socket, eye organ itself, how do it affect, like so even in our physical body, all the nerves are, very detailed, right? Very detailed, one after the another. It's so complicated. Like this. And then there's, for example, what they do believe is now this system, they believe, for example, those things, some of the things, they do not come, they do come without any cost. Now they say, you say the thorn, thorn, the how to say, the sharp thorn, the sharpness of the thorn has no cost, right? And so also the pea, how to say, there's one food, the pea. The shape of the pea is something like, round or whatever. Sapphire. It has no cost. Like this. Then, if so, something like this, there are things that they do believe that things come into being without any cause and conditions, right? And then, if you try to take a closer look, if you try to go a little bit, deeper, then Buddhists talk about the four logic or the four reason. The reason of what? The first, the reason of functioning. The reason of functioning. The reason of dependent origination. The reason of the logic, and then the reason of the nature, right? Reason of the nature. The first one is, right, the apple fruit, just take an example. There is an apple seed, because there is an apple seed, there is an apple as a fruit come into being. Without seed, how can the apple come into being? So, so because there is just the cause, the apple seed as a cause, apple fruit as a result comes into being, and then apple fruit as a apple fruit as a result is merely dependent on the apple seed as a cause, right? So apple fruit and apple seed, they dependent. So this is the reason of the dependent origination. The reason of the functioning means if you right, if you there is an apple seed, the same apple seed. If you take care, the apple seed is very, a potent apple seed, right? If you take care, with this, you put the water, that, using the temperature, the sunlight, if everything is there, the apple fruit, you will get the fruit. Why you get fruit? Why do we get fruit? If you put this in the soil, expecting to to grow the fruit, put the water all the time, will it give to apple? Why?
It's not the right cost.
Why? Second reason is missing, because it has no function, it has no potential, it has no, how to say, it has no potent, which can act as the the powerful cause, which give rise to the result. Apple fruit as a result. So therefore, the apple seed, if you take care everything, it grows into the fruit, because there is a potential, potent, right? So like this, and then what is called as the posit, the reason of positing, how to say, the reason of logic, theba, the reason of logic. The reason of logic means, right, now again very interesting, again the seed, the same seed, you take everything care, sunlight is being given, it gives rise to beautiful apple fruit, apple tree. Why? Apple tree, and transformation take place, right? It grows into apple big. When you first saw it, it was just a seed, but then later it grows into big. Why? It becomes something big tree, much bigger than oneself, right? Why? Because there is the nature of impermanent, there is the nature of the lack of independent existence, the lack of independent existence, and also has the nature of the impermanent. Because of that, things changes. Something very small can grow into become big, grew bigger and bigger. It shows there is a transient nature, impermanent nature, right? This one. So this is the reason of the logic, right? And then if you take care, it grows into beautiful tree, nice tree. If you don't take care, if you don't use the water, just let it be, it will not grow. It will not grow, again because of what? Because of impermanent nature. When we talk about impermanent, that means when things come into being, when all the causes and conditions come into being, it gives rise to result. When something is missing, it will not give rise to result. All this because of the impermanent nature, right? Impermanent nature. And then finally, the reason of nature, right? Now the question is, why the apple seed give rise to apple? Why the apple seed grow into the apple fruit? If you take care, apple, every morning you water them, you put a good shade, sunlight, very balanced temperature. If you do all this, it will give rise to apple. Why? If you take care, it gives rise to result, is because it's the nature. It's the nature. We want happiness, no doubt, no question. We want happiness. We don't want suffering, no question. We don't want suffering, but we want happiness and do not want suffering. If you say why, if you say why, for the reason, this is the nature. If you say how, you can explain in what ways you want happiness, in what ways you do not want, you can answer. When we say how you want happiness, Why? If you say why you want happiness, do not want suffering, then our solution is this is the way it is. This is the nature. The fire. The fire is not burning upside down. It's a fire burning from bottom. Also the waterfall. Water falling. Water comes falling down, right? Not up. Why? This is the nature. Right. And in some cases, why the planets move around the sun? Why the sun is not moving around the planets? Right? Why the electrons move around the atom? If we say this, there is a two way that we can answer. One is how it revolves, and one is why and how. Right? If you say how, you can explain. We will find answer. This is the answer is what we do find in the right physics and all these things. But if you say but why, then you have no answer. This is the nature. It is. No one, and also no one need to prove, no one need to prove the basic fact that we want happiness. This is our instinctive nature. The moment we take birth, we are born into that way. We want to achieve. We are born to obtain happiness. Right, obtain happiness. But then why you want happiness? Then what we do, what we say, why you want happiness? Sometimes people get upset, this stupid question. If you say how, then you can answer. If you say why you want happiness, then we can say what you are talking about. Why means it's the nature. This is the nature. This is the way. This is how the way it is. It's the nature of the things. Right. So, who taught well-dependent origination? So, right. So this standard reason, right? So this understanding the logic, the reason of the dependent origination dispel all the perverted views, and this logic itself, no logic can prove this to be a false logic. No logic can prove this dependent arising logic as a mistaken and false logic, because this logic alone is the king of the logic, right? The king of the logic, king of the reason. Now, what time it is?
5:53. Almost 6.
Oh yeah, we have over there. I think then we better leave it here and then probably next. Too much teaching then. No good, right? Any question? Us or?
Quick question.
Yeah.
The why is the what we call it is in the not in it's only on the scope of the Buddha's understanding.
This one?
Yeah, that nature it's only on the scope of the Buddha's understanding.
Which one?
When you say that the why doesn't need to have an explanation.
I see.
Because there isn't, but that's because that's only under the scope of the Buddhas. Is it?
Not that way, not like this, some, just like, we say, for example, like fire, right? Fire. What is the function? The function of the fire is to burn, right? To burn. If you come into contact with the fire, if you come into touch with the fire, you get burned, right? Something which has the heat, something which produces the heat and has the ability to burn. This is the nature of the fire, right? So if one could ask, why, you can ask two questions, why the fire has the ability to burn. One question. How the fire in what ways the fire has the ability to burn, right? So if you asked in what ways the fire has the ability to burn, how it burned, how it has the capacity to burn or the ability to burn other things, you can answer, one can give the answer, a lot of answer, lot of detailed answer and explanation can be explained, can be presented. But then you say, why the fire has the ability? So this is, even your Buddha may say, yeah, this is the nature, this is the way it is, this is the way it is, this is how it is, this is the way it is, this is the way of nature, what we sometimes call as, this is the law of cause and effect, right? Sometimes, when things come into being, when all the causes and conditions come into being, it gives rise to result. When either of the cause and condition is missing, it cannot give rise to the result, right? So if you say why this is so, or if you say how, you can explain. If you say why, this is the nature. This is the nature it is. This is the way it is. This is the way it is made. Something like this. Right. More thinking. This is important topic. Yeah, you need to more think. Better. Very, very interesting topic.